welcome to the Self Project podcast. I'm your host, Christy Martin, and I'm a life, mindset, and human design mentor who is all about helping you heal and rediscover your authentic self so you can go out and do some really epic stuff. So this podcast is going to be all about spirituality, self-empowerment, self-discovery, wellness, healing, parenting, sobriety, mental health, you name it, we're going to talk about it. This is all about helping you along in your own self-project journey. So go ahead and let's sit back and dive right in. Welcome back to the show this week, and I want to welcome Alie Harwood. And Alie is a holistic wellness and confidence coach and an embodied dance facilitator. And she helps shy, introverted women to discover and embody their most empowered selves so they can live their lives with more inner peace, passion, and purpose. And I'm so excited to speak with Alie today. I was telling her a little bit before we started the show that that's me, shy, introverted woman. So that really spoke to my heart. And I was really excited to hear more about how she helps them, more of her story. So Alie, if you didn't mind, I just have to thank you for being here today again. And do you mind sharing more about yourself with us, who you are, and more of your story that led you to where you are today?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much for having me. So my story really began when I entered my teenage years, high school. Like many people, I became, more self-aware, started to compare myself, and soon became clear that I was a lot more quiet and shy than other people. And really, this kind of led to development of, subconscious beliefs that my personality and really my sense of identity was not good enough, because I was always comparing myself to the explicitly confident people and the popular ones and the sociable ones, and sometimes louder or more daring, the kind of extrovert ideal. And so I tried to compensate for that by trying to look as good as I could. And sadly, that led to an eating disorder when I was 14. And luckily, thankfully, I didn't get admitted anywhere, because the thought of that was terrifying. But I kind of, I never really solved that, the root issue for me of that kind of lack of self-worth. And so I had this very private struggle right up until my early 20s, where it was just this kind of turbulent relationship with my body, with food and exercise, and with myself, my personality. And so it was, feeling self-conscious, overthinking, judging myself. And I hated talking about myself, or sometimes I felt like I needed to be more like others to fit in, or it was just kind of easier to withdraw, and be alone. So yeah, it was just this private struggle of low self-worth and confidence that I felt too ashamed to really talk about. Even though I had good friends and, I had a supportive family, but it wasn't something that I could talk about. And the turning point for me was quite unexpected, because when I think it was 22, 23, came home one summer from my university, and I read this inspiring true story online about a woman who discovered she had suppressed anger towards her dad. And that really, really resonated with me. And she was guided through this powerful forgiveness process, basically. And I just knew that I had to do it for myself. And I did that. And it was, it was a journal kind of journaling the forgiveness. By on my own. But then the next part of it was actually having the courage to go and speak to my dad and just kind of, tell him everything that how I'd been feeling, how I felt. And that experience, like, firstly rekindled our relationship, and then it had this knock-on effect on my other relationships. And it was this first kind of experience where I was consciously taking responsibility for my own well-being, because I hadn't like really identified that I had this suppressed anger. But then once I realized it, I was like, okay, I need to do something about this, not only for my own well-being, but also for my, our relationship. So that was really powerful. And then it kind of opened up this journey that I went on of, just self-discovery and self-love and mindset. And that's what then, led me down to discover coaching. And that really spoke to me. So in my training as a coach, I was then guided to, explore who I wanted to support specifically. And, it became clear when I looked back at my own story. I was like, okay, well, yeah, this is what I've been through, and this is, all the things I've learned. And so helping, shy, introverted women was just made the most sense.
That's incredible. Thank you for sharing your story with us. I was making a whirlwind of notes as you were talking about things that stood out to me that I wanted to kind of touch back on. One of the things that you mentioned early on is that you're always comparing. And I think that that's a trap that we all fall into. I think that we all go through it, especially as, women, and it starts at a younger and younger age that we see in our, teenage girls and now our middle school girls. But it's still, I catch myself in that trap as an adult too, scrolling through Instagram with my business. And I'm like, oh my gosh, look at the way she's doing it. And I need to do my business that way, or my thing this way, or, my strategy that way. And we get caught up in that. So I really love that you bring, that up, because I think that we do it without even being aware of it, because, I think it starts kind of as a survival instinct. We're comparing the environment around us, like a food chain type thing, survival of the fittest. So I think that comparison is kind of naturally born into us, but then again, it's ingrained in us by society, especially with our traditional educational system and grading systems. And so all of these things, so we're doing it without even realizing it. So, you talked about that. You had that lack of self-confidence, just that lack of self-worth. So, at the root of all of the symptoms, because you said you had the eating disorder, for me, I showed up multiple things throughout my life. I had binge eating. I dealt with like a skin picking disorder. I later in my adult years dealt with alcoholism. And so it was always transferring to these different symptoms and never getting to the root of that problem and addressing, again, the self-worth, the suppressed anger, the suppressed emotions. So I'm just like, all these light bulbs are going off for me. So I'm just really excited that you talk about, you have to get to the root of it. You have to look at the root cause of what's driving these behaviors, So what I would love to ask is, we talk about shy introverted women, and right away I said, that's me. And so maybe let's talk about, though, like, what does it really mean to be an introvert? Like, what does being an introvert really mean? And how might one, well, I hate to use the word, like, how might one identify with it, because I hate putting like labels on things, but maybe you can educate us more on this.
Yes. Yeah, I'm the same. And so I think first, it's important, first of all, to, describe what it does really mean to be an introvert, because it has so many misunderstandings, of kind of being the same as shy, or having social anxiety, or being antisocial, or, all of these kind of negative associations. And so, first of all, it's a personality type on its own. And it's definitely not something to fix. And there are some typical traits. So one of them is, like, introverts typically, they process things internally. So they make sense of things privately and often quite deeply in our minds first. So we love to reflect on things and daydream and imagine and analyze and all of those things, as opposed to, immediately speaking them out loud or wanting to, talk to someone about our thoughts. And another typical trait is this kind of being more sensitive to stimuli in the environment. So whether it's noise or light or lots of energy, lots of people, lots of emotions. And so because of that sensitivity, we are typically, prone to losing energy the more time we are spent in these kind of stimulating environments. And then we need that time alone, or that quiet time, to recharge. Whereas extroverts typically kind of gain energy in those, stimulating social environments. And, they can last a lot longer. But yeah, it's a spectrum, the introversion, extroversion, it's a spectrum, and we all have different, changes in our energy, in our mood, right? So it's yeah, I think it's good to have that understanding, especially the fact that it's something that, it's not something to fix, it's kind of a personality type. And there's even been studies to show that the brains of introverts are wired differently, have longer neural pathways in the brain, for example. And also, I think, more sensitive to dopamine. So it would explain why, extroverts typically, kind of, they thrive on that, on those kind of, that dopamine hit, whereas for introverts there's a limit.
Yes, that's so interesting. I made a note of that the brain's wired differently for introverts. That would be so interesting to go look up more about. I was over here the whole time that you were kind of talking about the typical traits of the introvert. I'm over here like nodding and kind of laughing because I'm like, yep. And so, like I said, I don't like to necessarily call it a label, but I always think that these types of kind of systems, or these types of, I like to call them kind of like self-discovery systems. They're really just a different way of understanding yourself. It's not about putting a label on yourself, but almost, I don't know the word that I'm looking for. Category is not the word that I'm looking for either, but it's just kind of giving your self a different way of understanding yourself. Like, I'm really into guiding people through their human design. I don't know if you've ever heard of human design, but again, another system of self-discovery. And you could again say, like, you're being labeled into the different types, but it's all about, just like I said, another way of viewing yourself, not labeling yourself, but another way of looking at yourself. That I felt led for me, it's self-discovery and then self-acceptance when I see these things. And I'm just like, oh my gosh, no wonder I'm that way. It makes total sense now. And then I can stop fighting and comparing myself. Like we talked about, I can stop fighting, wanting to be like, why am I like this? Why can't I be like this? And it's just, it allows you to embrace it,
Yeah. I'm huge on self-discovery as that first step as well. And it's just asking, like, what are my needs and my preferences and my passions and my values and my desires, all of those things. And, of course, also looking at the areas that that we can heal or grow in. And then, like you said, having that sense of acceptance and compassion around all of those things, just acknowledging, yes, this is true for me right now. And then I feel like, then you can choose which ones do you want to fully embrace and which ones do you want to, develop from this place of self-love and self-empowerment rather than like pressure or judgment.
Oh my gosh, yes, I love that explanation of it. Because, like you said, you can take to what resonates with you and what you want to build on, or what you said, like you said, what you want to develop. Um, I feel like you already kind of just answered this question. I was going to say, what's some of the tips that you offer some of the women that you start working with to just like, really start to develop this kind of self-confidence and the self-worth. I love that you just kind of almost answered it by saying, like, take a look at what your needs are, your passions, your values. But is there anything else that you would add to that as well?
Yeah, so definitely that self-discovery part at the beginning and the acceptance. Then it's all about, looking at the mindset, looking at all the labels that you identify with and your self-talk, and yeah, your beliefs about yourself and about your desires as well, in terms of like how worthy or capable you think you are of them. And just, yeah, basically highlighting the ones that are limiting you, and realizing that they are not fixed, but what you choose to believe will be true for you, basically. So it's realizing like, okay, I actually have a choice here. Do I want to keep this belief, this program running, or do I want to replace it with something more empowering and more supportive? So that's definitely the next stage. And so ongoing self-love and compassion, of course, because it's not about becoming the perfect human being, and it's not about becoming an extrovert or someone completely different. It's just, I like to call it stepping into your empowered self, who knows that she has a choice, and it's about who you're being, when the challenges come up, and when you make mistakes, and when you get triggered, because you always have a choice of how you respond to these things. And then I think, when it comes to actually taking action, it's about consistent baby steps, consistently moving through the fear, and knowing that fear is to be expected, and the more you move through it, the more courage you build, and that courage is what leads to the confidence.
Oh, wow. That's so good. I wrote down that you always have a choice in how you respond. Sometimes we can get caught up in this loop of just reacting, being reactive to things. And so I always love to say, and this plays right into like some of the first steps of just being aware of your behavior and being able to change it, is like being self-aware, be able to take that step back and say, like, why am I stuck in this, loop of maybe being reactive in whatever situation it is. But yeah, being able to take that first step and just become aware of it, not judge yourself. I love that you added earlier, just like lovingly, looking at it, because you've been running this programming for years, but just take a really loving look at it. And like you said, it's just consistent baby steps. You don't have to I've made the mistake in the past. I'm going to use like a really traditional example of like diet and nutrition and exercise. I would be like, okay, I want to like lose 20 pounds. I'm going to change all my eating. I'm eating healthy. I'm drinking water. I'm making all these changes from eating junk food, like drinking soda, not working out. I'm going to work out 7 days a week. I'm going to eat, only vegetables and this, and I'm only drinking water. And you jump in and you're like, maybe good for a week, maybe 2 weeks. And then it's like, you're right back. And you're like, I couldn't stick with all of this. I've found when I do it that way, I don't make the changes that I want. But I love the consistent baby steps when I'm gentle with myself, and I'm just like, you know what? Right now, I just want to make sure that I'm drinking enough water every day. And then when I've made that a habit, and we've again changed those, neural pathways that are, cementing that habit in there, then I'm like, okay, well, like now I'm a person that drinks water. Like, what do I want to change next? So it's just, I love that you say baby steps. Like, I feel like we always, and this is me included, like we take an all or nothing approach to things. Like if I can't make all these changes, then like I might as well do nothing. And I still catch myself in that. So
Yeah, me too.
so I love that. One other thing that I would just really love to talk a little bit more about is that you are an embodied dance facilitator. I would love to just, for those who may not know, would you mind explaining a little bit more about like what exactly is embodied dance?
Yeah, so I always like to start with talking about embodiment by itself, first of all, which is, I mean, I think everyone has their own take on it, but for me, it's consciously feeling what's alive inside you, whether it's, an emotion, sensations, a quality, and then authentically expressing that on the outside with your whole being. So we kind of know the example of like, oh, she is the embodiment of joy, for example. And it's because it's not only in her body language, but it's also like an energy thing. It's that inner and outer alignment. And so, yeah, embodied dance is basically a tool to practice that so it's very dynamic because it will be dependent on what your intention is. But, for example, if your intention is to release suppressed emotions, for example, then, you can basically move in certain ways that will, invite that kind of release. Like shaking, full body shaking is a great one for any kind of release. And then equally, you can set the intention to call in your desired feelings and qualities. So maybe it's, confidence, or maybe it's creativity or pleasure, like whatever it might be. And again, so I will choose, create a specific playlist for a session. And it's typically kind of like a journey that starts with a kind of grounding meditation. So it's a great way to calm the mind. And then sometimes we might do some kind of floor movement, and then gradually making our way up to standing, where it's kind of like a peak of energy with the music as well. And then going back down at the end to integrate everything that you've experienced. So I love that it's like this mind, body, soul integration, because you're calming the mind, activating your body and your body's intuition as well, and then expressing your soul. So yeah, it's basically a free form, dance, freestyle dance, but I can give the women who attend lots of cues. Some will be physical cues, and some will be more visual, energetic cues. And from that, you then get to, expand your range of movement and therefore your range of expression. If that makes sense.
Absolutely. So cool. In a few minutes, I'm going to ask where we can find you, but I wanted to share a personal experience with this. Often too, I think that we almost get, for whatever reason, well, there's a lot of reasons, but as women, we are almost scared of the idea of like embodying ourselves and letting ourselves kind of, I think of like almost like freedom, like letting yourself be kind of uninhibited in your movement. And I naturally this year started kind of embracing that, just like when you started talking about whole body shaking. I would experience, like after I got off of podcast interviews, I would have like this surge of energy, and I would get off my calls, and like I would go to my husband, and I'd be like, people are so awesome. Like, I just talked to the coolest person, and I'm like this huge ball of energy. And he would just be like, whoa, shrinking back from me. And so I naturally would start like both before and after interviews, because I get that really nervous, excited, anxious energy that like amps me up. I would just stand and I would just like shake. At first, my husband is like, "What are you doing?" And I'm like, "I just need to shake. There's just all this stuff happening in my body that I need to release it." And it was like my body was just naturally guiding me there. Or one time I was leading a Reiki session, and it totally turned into this like dancing thing, because we had the music and we ended up like dancing. And I'm like, well, that was supposed to be a Reiki session, but it was just like intuitively guided to move through it. So I just think that it's so cool, because it sounds like what you do is kind of like things that, we may already start kind of naturally embracing, like just letting the body move the way that it wants to, and letting the energy kind of flow. So what I would love to know is where how you're working with women. You said that you you lead these kind of, I think, are they like workshops or?
Yeah. So with the dance at the moment, I'm actually doing in-person dance workshops where I'm living. I may be doing some online ones soon. And then in terms of my coaching programs, so I have a 3-month one-to-one program called the Confident Introvert. And that takes a very holistic approach to building confidence. So we cover, the letting go of the past and the suppressed emotions, the mindset reprogramming, self-love, honoring your body, owning your voice, and then connecting to your purpose. Because that was really my kind of the steps that I took without really knowing it on my own journey. And I've also got a couple of group programs that I run, maybe a couple of times a year. So one that I'm running at the moment is Becoming Her Now, and that's a 5-week group program with kind of more focused on the mindset reprogramming, and then taking that daily inspired action to embody that empowered version of you. And the other one is called Express Yourself, and that's a 21-day group program.
Oh my gosh, so cool. And then where are we able to find you at online and follow you out on social media?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so my website is wellnesswithalie.com, and that's ALIE. And I'm Wellness with Alie on Instagram. And also I have a private Facebook group called the Confident Introvert Tribe.
Awesome. So everything will be linked up in show notes so that you'll be able to scroll down and just straight connect with Alie. I just have to say this has been an incredible conversation, and I could probably ask you 20 million more questions, and we could probably keep this going all night. But we were just talking, our time difference is almost, I think it's 11 hours. So while it's 9:30 in the morning for me, it's 8:30 in the evening for Alie. So we will wrap this up for her. So I would just love to know, as we kind of close this out, is there kind of a final message that you would leave with us, or any final tips or anything that you wanted to say?
Yeah, I think one of my favorite reminders is that we are not limited to a set of labels and patterns. We are multifaceted and ever evolving beings. And we get to choose who we want to be, and how we see ourselves as well, how we see ourselves.
I love that. So I just have to say, Alie, thank you for taking your time to be here, especially so late in your evening. So thank you again. This has been incredible.
Thank you so much. I really enjoyed it.
Thank you so much for joining me today for the Self Project podcast. I hope that you were able to find something useful or inspirational to take away with you today. So come and connect with me over on Instagram. It's @_Christy Martin, and let me know what you want to hear more of. go ahead and subscribe to the podcast and leave a review, and I will see you next time.